We're late and we're live.
Ooh, live and late.
We're very late.
It's like the late show?
It's a little bit of a later show because, we decided to take it on location because it's so beautiful outside.
Take it easy.
Why would we want to be in a studio when it's this pretty?
Taking it easy.
I
want to start getting on site.
Yeah.
I think that's where the magic's at with so much.
This is a test run at Nature's Touch.
We can talk about food and all those things, but we can also see it and eat it.
You're kind of in you're in the nursery here. You got to have a nursery to be able to have something grow, I
was in the nurseries today.
Were you?
I've been going nuts.
All right, we're live. We're going because this is the way it is. Welcome to Nature's Neighbor. I am your host, Melanie Blankenship, sitting with my co-host here, Josh Carmichael. Josh, welcome to downtown Templeton, California.
Heck yeah.
This is where it all began for Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest, as well as Nature's Neighbor.
Sure, this is where we met then, through the store.
This is where we met, buddy. We've filmed some things here together before,
That's right.
So this isn't our first rodeo, but this is our first live podcast, and I'm excited about this because I've been in an office today. Mondays are at Crescent Valley Meats and
business.
All business stuff, and I was shocked when I walked outside and could not believe how warm it was. Like, hot diggity dog, but at the same time I'm like, whoa, we just got warm. But you know what? That's the benefit and the love of where we live. You can pretty much guarantee it's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
It kind of changes from day to day.
Well, you can pick sort of the temperature you want by going from town to town.
Oh, gosh.
It changes every,
well, the wonderful
10-15 minutes.
The wonderful thing about, Central Coast is what temperature did you leave?
Yeah, I came from the coast up here, and I was like, it is warm.
Yeah.
But feels good. We got the breeze. Yeah. We're outside where we love to be.
Yeah, it is too beautiful
we're
right
happy.
now. This is the weather's distracting a little. This is where you need a hammock and a glass of wine.
Yeah, end of the day, we're doing these. I'm always ready to unwind for sure.
But this is again, we talk about this all the time, the beauty of where we live. And that is why, you and I work the way we do, why we're constantly trying to be creative, constantly trying to think outside the box and how we can be better than we were before. But that's also too, no matter where we are, no matter where we might be, I think you and I would be like that. But at the same time, there's so many people that are out there that want to be like this, but don't know where to start. And that's where I think a little bit of this show is to actually engage the thoughts of what you're already having. So most people want to keep a simple life and enjoy where they live and be resourceful within their own means. But how do they get there, right?
Yeah.
How do we, and that's the thing, as simple as, look what we're doing. We're literally sitting for a second, doing a podcast, and the beauty of what we work in every single day, but taking this moment to recognize.
Yeah, it is funny for us because I'm always spending my time outside, and so to come inside, to the studio and do the show, it's a change. I usually try to put a clean shirt on. Today I got to come
Thank
straight
God
from
it's
work.
not a Dodgers t-shirt.
So, hey, I was trying to do a nice thing for you last time.
There you go. Well, yeah, thanks. That's Giants.
Yeah, really, we'll get into that next time. But I think that, it's great that we, get to slow down and do something where we're sharing, just the conversations or hopefully these sites and locations that we're going to be on. I think it's going to be really great to, showcase everything that we have going on here that makes our, lives so good.
Yeah, we're totally testing this out, guys. So, all the people that have been talking about, hey, let's do this, let's go here, this is why we're doing this, is because we're testing to see if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere. Because, there's, always a distraction. Internet, there's all those fun things about what it takes to put on a live podcast and be able to, when we have the Pro Miguel, there's nothing we can't do. And again,
we haven't been bucked off yet.
Not
yet.
Our
first rodeo.
But the thing is, too, is we're coming off, today's May 19th, right? 2025. We're coming off Wine Festival weekend here locally.
Yeah.
And normally, this time of the year, it's already been 100 a couple of days, at least, right? In degrees, temperatures. I mean,
I've heard, yeah.
It's warm today, and I think this is the first day that it's actually been not overly humid. It's actually like a normal warmth.
Yeah.
And it's
you
crazy.
can tell the seasons are changing, and so this is starting to kick in. Spring has sprung.
So now
we're moving forward.
the
to
weather's
summer.
defining what we're doing here, because we like totally threw this together.
Yeah,
Let's see
living
if we
in
can
the
do it. Let's
seasons,
put it
yeah.
together, and boom, here it is, warm. I'm looking at these beautiful, they're magic oak trees that we're surrounded by, and look, the
Yeah.
wind is just gently blowing through. And again, talk about nature's neighbor. Look at what our logo is amongst the oak trees.
Yeah, and all
right?
the veggie starts right now. I mean, that time of year, we're getting everybody's beds planted, and
It's
gardens
time.
are growing. So
I
this
started
is a good time of
mine.
year. It's fun.
I started
when
mine
things
this
warm up.
weekend. I got, normally I wait until Memorial Weekend to like really just hit it, because yes, May
It can
10th,
be cold up here
yes,
still. You
and it
can
was.
get those late little frosts. Yeah,
A couple
totally.
of days ago, it was cold. So I started, I've been working my soil for the last month, and aerating, putting compost. I've been mulching. I was showing Josh my arms because I'm skirting up oak trees and pruning trees so that we can breathe. We're working on our fire protection on our ranch, and so what we've been doing is just cleaning up a little bit of the understory.
Spring cleaning, yeah,
not
still.
destroying the understory. Let me explain this. I didn't go and see an oak tree and saw a bunch of things growing underneath it and wiped it out. What I did is I cleaned up the understory. I might have had a little fun with my
Yeah.
helper. He didn't get poison. He doesn't get poison oak, so he says. So I let him deal with the poison oak. I try to stay out of
Was
it
it
as much
goat?
as
Was that-
no. My goats don't eat it. They're too
Oh, really?
spoiled.
Oh,
yes,
man.
they
You
won't
spoil
eat
your
it.
animals. Yeah, I don't
So-
get it bad. So I'm always in it, and I get you. We got to touch the land. I mean, that's a huge point that I love to make with people. They're sort of like, do not touch environmentalists and people that say, don't do anything to the land, let it be. But there's so much that needs to happen, and all the people that are touching the land still, ranchers, farmers, and all of us that own
But the
land
thing
or
is
work
there's a
lands.
difference. But there's a difference,
Yeah.
Josh, about farmers that touch the land, right? Farmers that work with the land, but not against it. We do have an epidemic in this society now that people come in and can afford to purchase land, right?
Yeah.
Which is super awesome, and I'm not, against that. But instead of looking at that piece of land and saying, I was in Italy, or I was here, or I was there, and they are doing it like this, I'm going to now come here and do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we looking at the land and the soil for what it is, and the natives and the natural ability of what it is, and learning to get creative with what is already there? Yes, I farm European fruits like tomatoes and peppers and peach trees and stuff. But in my system, I took an open area that needed some work,
Yeah.
soil work, and that's where I decided to plant my farm.
Yeah.
Not, I'm going to take out all these oak trees.
Yeah, you were being a good Indian, where you got to touch the land in a good way, where, we're cleaning the trees back. We're taking and harvesting things that we can use, and we're recognizing that there is value already here. And that's something we talk about so much more and more. And I had a friend, we tried to coin a term this weekend called bioregional living, where it was, okay, what's in that region? And biologically, and how do you live in it? And so a lot of times we'll help architect friends or other people site homes or structures on properties so that we're not cutting down trees, because people come in, they want shade somewhere, and then they cut down all the trees to build, and then they have nothing to start from. So really being able to use the benefits of the land, whether there's different topographies to use, slopes, creeks, hills, existing trees, and then all the food and medicine that exists is there. The bounty is here, and all the people that know how to use it, have really been run off. So it's great to bring those things back and integrate our lives today with the cultures that we have in our blood, and to know where we're at and have that sense of place. So
It's kind of crazy to
Smart.
think of how we become this, because it's like one side versus the other, right? Where one person says,
very extreme,
yeah,
yeah.
you should do it this way. One person,
yeah,
and I'm
it's all
gonna
or
say,
nothing sort of.
and
We
I'm
need
gonna
that integration for sure.
We do, but I'm going to be that person that's going to put this conversation out there of, this is the way that I do it, right? But I'm not going to be that person that's going to be like, this is the right way. I have years, I have history, I have knowledge, and I still don't feel like I know enough. Like
you should
and
keep
I'm
learning.
in it every single day.
Yeah.
I am living it every
Yes,
single day, and I
yes,
still
I hear
can't
you.
feel like my way is the right way. Your way is not. How do you
Well, there's
get
different
that way?
seasons, right? And there's different ways of doing things and harvesting for different reasons and so much more. So I think that, what I've always realized is it's just such a tapestry of things. And that's something that when you look to nature, you'll see, like all of our hills everything grows in these mosaics of different types of plants or plant communities and the way they work together. I always laugh. It's like, hey, plants are out there growing and they're kind of interconnected. They're like, okay, we're going to grow like this for the next 100 years. Okay.
And you're going to hang out and they're going to
be
work
on top of you and you're going to do this, but they all have their places. And so being in some really beautiful places like Toro Creek Canyon, so gorgeous to see a place where there's more, animals than people, and just really have that natural scape there that you can really use. We're drinking some, black sage and Artemisia tea with roses that were from down the street. So, there is an integration of where are we now? Yes, it's great to have thought that we could have preserved everything here and that we could have had that way of life or more. But if we could integrate some of that knowledge of knowing, all the food that's here, like we always say, the things from the ocean, things from the hills that taste good, knowing the plants and the medicine, and, also being able to have your own culture and to really touch the land in a way that's going to produce.
So somebody, I cannot remember who told me this saying, but, we were talking about how and why things grow a certain way. Like my comments constantly about poison oak, because, I'm a plant lover, and there's not a plant realistically that I don't see a purpose or don't like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm one to purposely raise my hand when I say I don't like poison oak, okay, because of what it does to me.
But people, some plants are annoying, I guess.
Well, exactly. But I had somebody tell me, well, poison oak is nature's way of keeping people on the trail. And I'm like, that's kind of good, because if you think about the way that poison oak grows in nature, it does grow in places where it's like, oh, that tree is trying to produce children, or that tree is like, maybe a little weak, but it's thriving in some point, but it needs a little boost, right? It doesn't want to be bothered.
It protects a lot of moisture. So anywhere there's moisture in the landscape, you kind of find it. So it sort of helps defend and shade that.
So your comment of, how plants will intertwine and to work together, and hundreds of years later, they're still working together, right? Like that saying of when, poison oak is nature's way of keeping people on the trail. I mean, that's kind of the same way. It's like, maybe it is. I pride myself in land consults with people, either new or existing landowners, is I go out and I read the soil, right? Yeah. I read the soil. Like, there's nothing you can't tell me that the soil hasn't already told me. So,
topography and soil are going to tell you
topography and soil
Exposures.
Is everything. And so, I read plants too, right? Because plants will only grow where their natural habitat is there, so they can thrive.
Things like it wetter, things like it drier, so you can know where things might be happy.
Well, how about
it's our best guess for Mother Nature.
How about all in the area, like on our ranch? We're on the west side of Templeton here, going towards the coast. All the areas where the Yerba Buena is very thick. I have so many young oak trees.
Yeah.
And then once the oak trees get to a certain stage, Yerba Buena dies back. I think that's, again, just like the poison oak keeps that moisture in.
Well, there's
Yerba
that
Buena
succession
is do that too.
And it's like, hey, there's this patch for this time. Nature's great because it's never static. So I think it teaches us how to really evolve and to deal with, like we said, chaos, like we dealt with today, setting up or whatever. You just have to keep going with the flow.
Yep.
And so nature's so great at showing that. So yeah, nature is not the same, where things are dynamic, and you can start to understand those dynamics. You can start to, like we said, work with her or get ahead by knowing where things are going to be successful or know where to find things. Like when we go mushroom hunting, we're looking for certain slopes or places where they would be, at and happy, right? We're not going to go search hills up and down. As it is, we walk miles and miles just to find, what's there. So you got to know the patterns.
To understand a forest, right? And I think also too, it's hard for people to understand forests because, especially in California now, a lot of people have to travel so far to get to a forest. And now forests are changing, right? Like it's as you take a deep breath, right? Yeah. We need forests to clean our air. But look around us. Look what I've been on this property for 17 years. This is where nature's touched. I was down the street
with the creek right behind you.
Yeah, so with the Salinas River. Yeah. Josh and I are looking at the Salinas River right now, and it's not a river right now. It's willow trees and cottonwoods and a little bit of a trickle, tracks. But there's something about Templeton, right? And I see us changing. We're still a small community. We're an unincorporated area. We're considered a town, not a city. Yeah. We're standing in this
We got
my
the Templeton
garden.
Gap
yeah.
that brings that wind, so it's a great spot in
Yeah,
North
so
County.
what is Templeton Gap? Templeton Gap is this one low-lying area between the coastal mountain range that literally allows the fog to seep in closer and
Great
earlier
for-
than it does in Atascadero and Paso.
Mm-hmm.
It comes into Templeton, so Templeton is always a little cooler.
Growing Pinot, growing all the stuff that kind of follows that
calls
fog.
that likes the
Makes it
fog.
cooler.
But look at how much of a community Templeton is. But
Yeah, still one of our
look
small
at all-
towns like the rest
Look
of-
at the
yeah.
trees, though.
Yeah.
That I mean, a community is also these forests, and people don't realize how much these trees
Yeah.
communicate,
Yeah.
how much they pride in working together. You know, like you pointed out, my stinky breath ahead or Rose of Sharon tree that is
Yes.
absolutely beautiful in the back of my property, but it does put off
Bigger than the oaks.
It is bigger than the oaks, but I mean, do you know the blue jays that love that?
Yeah, it
tree
reproduces
and-
so much. And I think, yeah, just being in your environment, Los Osos, all the empty lots still have 100-year-old plants. We have our bayfront with 100-year-old plants, our forests. So, you know, these towns here where they're not quite trying to be a city yet, you know, we still have a lot of that natural space to give them a lot of character.
And
So,
what
yeah,
I'm
you
saying
know where
is
you are.
A lot of
when you
people
show
have
up.
to travel to get to seeing this kind of
Oh,
stuff.
that don't
now.
live in our area.
Yeah, don't live in
Sure.
our area, but I mean, just look at San Luis, look at Paso. San Luis is still got
Has the mountains
it
in
has the
town.
mountains and stuff, but Paso
A lot of concrete
a
showing
lot
up
of concrete,
now. Yeah.
and I'm like, maybe if I
balance
put
that.
this out there and make people aware of the fact that you actually got to learn how to work amongst them and work with them instead of against them, maybe we can do, maybe I might be that tree hugger that wants to save a few, but I cannot get over when we go from Atascadero to Paso and see the drastic changes that we're seeing now, where
Yeah.
if we don't recognize what neighbors are, whether it's just you and I
Oh,
as humans,
yes.
or neighbors in nature,
God, I got the chills, yeah.
no, because they are our
It's
neighbors.
so righteous,
and,
yeah.
And I'm only putting that out is because as we sit here in this garden right here, right now, and knowing that it's the nursery, right? You got to have the nursery, you got to plant your plants in order to have your food come.
That's right.
And then the little stand behind us is where the groceries happen, right? But you
The end
gotta
result.
tend it. You gotta manage it. You gotta be a part of it. And we started this conversation off with farmers that work the land or recognize the land, but it's at the same time are working with the land. We gotta
Yeah.
take this and change this vocabulary, maybe a little, and also in oh hello.
Table dressing.
But also just bring it differently, because instead of us thinking we need to change something, because that's also what I want to have a little bit of a conversation either now or continue.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Do we really need to change, or do we really need to just recognize, fix, and keep moving?
I think it's just almost a perspective. We're changing perspective. And I love with, things like permaculture and talking about simple things, especially in gardening and touching the land, into farming, where, those things we inherently know how to do because we want to survive. So we have all those instincts of getting to food, the smell of rain, still is something that's embedded in our DNA. So there's so many things that bring people to nature. But I think that the biggest thing to me is that, as we've been talking, there's that gap where it's like either you're city folk or you're country folk. You're either like a farmer and understand how to work in the dirt, or you're an urban person that, doesn't. And also just like, are we protecting, the trees or environment, or are we building city? And there's no, black and white. It's really such a tapestry that we need to weave, and we need to say for each, town where we live, like, hey, what's the character of the towns, and how do we, keep it alive? And everything that's alive grows.
Yeah.
So your city's going to grow. And so how much concrete are we having in relation to how much, riverfront are we keeping open? How many trees are we keeping? What kind of, park space? What kind of farmland?
Are you getting into civil engineering?
I guess so. I'm laying it out. But, I'm really just thinking like, it's like that building blocks of life. It's not just the natural landscape anymore, but it's an integration of how we're going to develop, with our clients, essentially what we do at all scales. It's always like, we want to get plants in people's lives in meaningful ways. Whether you're a winery, I was just out at Opalo. I got to see Rick, told me he should come on the show.
Yes,
but
you should.
Can
you tell them so they can come and talk about quince?
Oh man, you should see our quince trees are going berserk. We just put in that garden, I think it's been 10 years. It looks like not a hair out of place. And I haven't been up there in years.
You just gave me the chills.
It's so beautiful. And we dropped off a bunch of the summer veg for Eric the chef, and You know, Rick was there and everyone's having a meeting, so I got to say
I
hi.
miss
And
him. Like,
I got to get some wine to bring to an event, so I really want to connect with them. But yeah, building this farm space where we can do venues there, they can have, you know, different events. They can bring the food into the kitchen, into their, you know, everyday, you know, kind of connection with food and wine there. But it just is really amazing when we can put that in, or we can help people in a backyard scale, or we can help people at a city scale, you know. And it's about kind of managing those natural resources and not being afraid that, yeah, let's keep some riverfront open. Like one of our projects with City Farm Slow, we just got to restore the creek, and now that's one of the best crop producing areas. We got elderberry, roses, strawberries, yerba buena. We got
the
all
elderberry
these
this year
things.
is so
Acorns.
beautiful. Everywhere
Yeah.
I go, no matter
Yeah, we're gonna do an elderberry event this year. It's really popping.
Oh, I'll bring you a whole bunch because I'm going to
Yeah.
harvest hundreds and
Yeah, I
hundreds of
think
pounds of it this
End of the
year.
summer should be a good time to share on
On
elderberry.
our ranch, I mean, we're going to probably harvest at least several hundred pounds
Sweet.
of elderberry.
Yeah.
But even as I head east, the elderberries are huge
Yeah.
to the east. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So
It's a good year. I think we had a good late rain where, like,
Yeah.
I mean, apricots are looking like they're having a good year this year. You know, a
coming
lot of
on
fruits
late.
are setting
They're
well.
Yeah, everything
So-
on those so flower harvest is earlier and longer. But it's taking it a little while to get warmer. And I
Yeah, it was
talk
a
that-
cold late this year.
I
Yeah.
talk about that in the sense of a beekeeper's realm, right? I just talked to my business partner that comes and helps put bees on our land
Nice.
last night, and we were talking about how, like, nothing's predictable. You know, beekeepers in this area really want the black sage, right?
Oh,
That
so
produces
good.
the best honey ever. Speaking of bees, I got my good friend
Nice.
from North Carolina who's a beekeeper. I got his soda here that I've been drinking. It's only made with honey, no high
Beautiful.
fructose corn syrup
Like it.
or sugars. But I mean, he talks because when we actually met, and here he was in North Carolina, and here I am, a California girl. He's like, "What are you doing in North Carolina when you have black sage in California?" Right? Like, so it's fun because, you know, yes, he's a beekeeper, but most beekeepers, true beekeepers, are botanists, right?
Yeah.
They know their plants, and so, you know, talking
And they
to
know all
my
parts of the
guy
cycle.
here,
That's the thing. Yeah.
we were talking last night about how late the black sages come on.
Yeah.
It's there,
I
but
noticed
it's
that,
not.
too.
It hasn't fully pushed
True.
yet, so the nectar's not completely flowing in a lot of areas, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ceanothus, the madrones, everything was late this
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
but yet
Yeah. So, you know, this is really hanging on late this year. I
annual
noticed.
flower was early and short because it got
Sure.
cold.
Yeah.
So bees overall.
Lupins, yeah, didn't have a great season.
No,
Yeah.
but bees overall are okay. They're not strong. They're not, you know, that's
they
not
had
a
a gap
gonna be.
there.
Yeah, it's not going to be
Oh,
a
sorry.
good, like a good strong year, but it's good, right?
Got it.
And it's. I mean, if you wrote, so I've been doing bees for about 18 years now. So if you wrote a book of prediction, I'm going to be honest with you. After talking to him last night, I went back and I have a binder of beekeeping and flowers, and I keep logs.
You nerd
right?
out on it. Okay.
I do
got
because I can't remember. There's too many things to remember. I can't remember.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's crazy.
technical.
Every year for 18 years has been drastically different.
Yeah,
Nothing is even like flowers do not bloom anywhere in
The
proximity.
cycles are longer on those.
Yes,
usually,
in
yeah.
like a 2-week gap, you know, because like as a biodynamic farmer, everything is about the moon phase, right?
Yeah.
Everything is about the, you know, the cosmic force that, you know, the moon, you know, the gravity forces the moon pull, the energy force that the sun pulls, you know, your black and your white, your yin and your yang. But at the same time, it's crazy. So if we're going to go by a calendar, right, and we're going to go by a moon phase, nothing has been in 18 years in the way that flowers bloom and how prediction is gone.
Seasons have been all different.
It's been all different, but it's crazy because if you take the biodynamic calendar, you take the Farmer's Almanac, you take the Jewish calendar, because the Jewish culture puts out a really awesome
Accurate,
farming calendar, and you put them all together. It's kind of funny. They all kind of zigzag each other, right? But they're all not. None of them are wrong.
Yeah.
None of them are wrong, but they kind of zigzag. But I'm giggling because it's like, you know how the calendar changes, right? And people don't realize how much the calendar changes.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to see, you know, but look at the different regions of where those calendars started to get written from. You know, Middle East, you know,
Yeah.
Eastern European, the Farmer's Almanac is Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
So look at again, like you can't predict things when it's based on somewhere else. You can only predict
When
things
you be
from where
looking at
you're
the Mexican
saying,
calendar.
well, or the Central Coast calendar, because I've kept track. But one thing I
Well,
can
even the
say,
microclimates like the coast and the inland, we really have different calendars of when to plant things.
mine is from our ranch.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, 18 years of drastic difference. We go from 13 inches of rain to 94 inches of rain to this year,
Yeah.
65 inches of rain
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean? Like in one year we did, 9, and we all thought there was going to be no more water, right?
Yeah.
Where Paso gets 9 and they're
Yeah.
all surviving.
Yeah,
You know
they
what I
get
mean?
below,
But,
yeah.
because of water movement. But at the same time, I'm just saying, how do we predict? There is no prediction. What we have to change in this thought is how to adjust, how to
Sure.
adapt, how to become more familiar
Yeah.
with what we need to be able to.
Yeah, we always say the problem is the solution.
The
So
problem is the solution.
how do you farm in this? Well, you use crops even there. And I think that's something huge too, that we haven't even really recognized so much of this land, of the things that are here that we could be doing. So I was trying to get acorns and elderberries, into this farm stand down the road. And I've been making people elderberry cookies, and I've been having my friend with Bliss River make us elderberry lemonade and teas and
I
just
miss
showcase.
her, by the way, too.
Yeah, we got to get her in touch with what
Yep.
we're up to. But yeah, she's definitely cranking along, seeing her at the markets, and love connecting with her with that product. And so, it's something that is so, like you said, Central Coast. And, it was really funny. I heard a good thing. Someone was just sort of saying in passing, but they're like, you know what? The differences of like when you live in Italy or you live here, he's like, you're not going to go to the grocery store and get a tomato year round. He's like, you're only going to get tomatoes when they're in season. He's like, but those tomatoes, they're going to be amazing. And I think also you just build up to those moments of what you're going to do with tomatoes during that season. And there's ways to stretch them in through the other seasons, preserving. But I think honestly, if we looked to the seasons, we'd be realizing we're getting everything that we need or want, in any way. And instead of really pigeonholing things, and I think we do that with most all of our foods, like meat, it's like, oh, I only want cow, pig, or chicken, on the menu. And it's like, man, look at all the reasons to have goats and sheep here in our area for, grazing issues and things, and, all the great things that they can produce with that. And then, same thing with our produce. We need to be looking at, more native foods, seeing the wildlands this weekend of, just trees popping up out of meadows, like, oh, there's a acorn, that's a nut tree. There's an elderberry, okay, that's a berry. Here's
Speaking
all
of-
these foods that are just dripping off the trees right around us.
Speaking of trees, can you come from Cambria to Templeton?
Yeah.
46. Have you noticed the sycamores? I'm going to make you point
Okay.
out. I want you to look at
Yeah, I
the
came
sycamores.
41 today, I'll have to look.
Okay, I haven't driven 41.
They usually get that first leaf that falls off, like the anthracnose usually hits them.
but
They've all been waking up, I noticed. I was looking at a lot of sycamores this weekend.
they look kind of funky.
Yeah.
And so
Might just be that anthracnose first flush.
And it was maybe a little bit more extreme this year because
Yeah.
of how cold it's been.
Yeah, a lot of the leaves, they come on and then they fall off.
We
and
need
then they come
we need
back.
a tree specialist. So if and let's talk. Oh, my
What are the
favorite.
sycamores up to this year?
My favorite book is The Language of Trees.
Oh, nice.
I love it because
I don't even know that.
It's a book that talks about the intimacies of a forest and how they communicate and how
Gosh, yeah.
everything is. Who is the communicator? The fungi and
Yeah, mycorrhizal,
and the
all the way up to
mycorrhizals
the
and
birds
how
and the trees.
Yeah, and how everything communicates and how caring
Yeah, how much
a
goes
forest
shared around.
it really
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And because in nature a lot of things are black and white, right? Everything's got to work for survival, right?
Yeah.
But in the forest it is a survival, but it's become such a symbiotic dance that the communication has become everything
Beautiful.
working.
I think that's something I wanted to say earlier, was just that when you look to nature as your role model, it's always to celebrate diversity. And one of the biggest problems we run into in the human world is like,
Categorizing.
yeah, really segregation and all these things, whether it's racism or any other topic that, separates us from each other or from the whole.
But I think
that it's, celebrating that diversity. So it's like one tree, like a giant, sequoia, it'd have birds that work the different sections. Some birds work the lower ground, some work the middle, some work the top. So there's always room for more and redundancy
But I
and
think
variation.
a lot of this whole diversity, I'm really taking
it's
a
a
step
hot
back.
topic, I guess,
It is,
right now.
but at the same time, it's also discipline. Where did discipline go? Because at the same time, when somebody's being a jerk, they're still a jerk.
Yeah, you got to
know
call
what I mean?
people out no matter what.
Where's the line that's crossed? If you don't, you know what I mean?
It's a good point. It's become a weird thing where people can't be
when you know
called
it's
out for
not
anything.
right, why would you accept it?
Yeah.
You know, and somebody, family member, we were having a conversation because there's a show on Netflix, I think is where it's at, talks about how a religious group of women coming out because they're tired of being a part of the religion and being suppressed.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say any names, but at the same time, it's like what they're wanting is against their religion. So does that mean that they're still Mormon or not? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, okay, so I get that I'm not in that religion, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to be suppressed or
Yeah. Or can that religion evolve, or
can
will
that
it not
can that
evolve?
religion or you know or should it? Because at the
Yeah.
same time, that's their religion. That's where's their discipline, right? Like if you're going to be a part of, we know it's like certain behaviors are wrong, but why do we know they're wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like it's like
Yeah.
where do we draw this line of, you know, your way versus my way versus
Or enlightenment and evolution versus, like you said, tradition and discipline.
yeah.
And
What
I
happens
was just
to just
thinking
nature?
Yeah, you know, we just kind of lost some of those role models. So I think it's hard. People are more and more confused. You know, now there's more and more question of, you know, all kinds of diversity of sexuality, of, you know, all kinds of things that are happening that, you know, we still have to be able to say, you know, what's the golden rule, like how to share or do unto others, right? So really, it doesn't matter, you know, who you are. It really matters kind of where you are and how to respect, like
but-
your elders. You know, you should be listening to people if you don't know them or not. You know,
But
there should
look
be
at-
some hierarchy to.
I mean, sexuality.
culture.
Sexuality is always the topic, right? It always seems to always go back to that. Is it right or is it wrong? But you and I are plant people.
Yeah.
Everything we talk about is sex because if you don't have sex, you're not getting a fruit.
I saw 3 bees on a fig leaf today.
Oh my
Get
goodness!
it
Well,
on, I
they're
was
just
like,
relaxing
do
because
it.
there was no nectar there. So you know there was nothing fun there for them. They're just resting.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, like we know that is cannabis will amorphodite.
Yeah.
If it's
yeah,
stressed
you get a
out
lot of
and it's not right.
hermaphrodite action
Yeah,
in
you get
plants.
a lot. How about
or see female, you know, flowers and male flowers on the same plant or on
How
separate
about
plants.
tomatoes?
We're always, like you said,
tomatoes
talking
put
about
off one male to how
pollination.
many females?
Yeah, per
right.
flowers
so
on each plant.
they could be polygamous, right?
Yeah.
You know. So at the same time, we talk about this all the time.
Kiwis.
When did it become bad?
Yeah, I think all those things in its own right. Like that's the thing. People started getting so uptight in certain ways, and I always refer to like playing pickup soccer. You know, I was younger, and so you'd play with all the Latinos and everybody, and so you know, like nobody knows each other really, or even really speaks the same language, right? But it's like, hey, you know, people know enough. They're like, hey, you like Moreno, Panzon. So they just call you how you look. They're like skinny boy. Hey. Dark boy, hey, you know, like dark, whatever. Fatty,
gordo.
here, yeah. Panzon, where's the? So you know they call people as it is, and it's like,
There's no racism.
I mean, nobody's gonna hate it because you want the ball. They're like, I'm trying to pass you the ball. You that looks like this,
Oh,
take the ball.
We were just talking soccer with Carlos.
Yeah,
Carlos
it all
was,
comes back to-
was the goalie because it was aimed for his belly. You know, so like and
But I just that's a beautiful way of just saying, like, in necessity, you know, in a pure moment, nobody's trying to, you know,
Hurt somebody.
hurt anybody. They're only trying to get along as teammates.
But
They're
at the same time, look at the
calling you
look
what
at
you
the,
are.
the environment
Be
and what you're
proud.
talking about. You're talking
what your
about
mama gave you.
Yeah, you're talking about it in a competitive realm, right? Like you're trying
Yeah.
to
Or
you
even
know,
cooperative.
and
let's call
cooperative,
it.
cooperative, competitive.
Yeah.
What's wrong with being competitive? I'm competitive. I'm
Yeah.
very competitive, but I'm competitive with myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
more
we're
than
trying to
what I
get
am
goals
with
on the other
anybody
team. So, like, you got to get communication. So you got to call each other.
Did start this
to the
conversation
thing.
about talking about getting in fights
Yeah, what are we
and
talking
sporting-
about again?
getting fighting in sporting events.
Yeah. We talked about sex. We talked about our rivalry.
But it's
What other topics do we hit every week? We
and
need
that-
to get to.
Well, that
we
is.
talked about farming.
We talked about
But we can
farming.
come back to that. I think that's a moment.
It's all in the same, though. This is what we're trying to explain.
And so in that whole realm, it's like, I think that there's no hate. I mean, why do we need to like segregate again, you know, right, left, or all these extremes? And I'll tell you something that was really great for me to see over the years doing, we call them wildlife workshops. We call them intermittent stream workshops. We call them all these things. And it was with all the regulation, you know, regulators, Fish and Game and those groups, along with the ranchers and farmers. And we're talking about how can we do things together. And you had great, you know, community elders like George Work. And he'd hold up a little float trough tool and he's like, who knows what this is? And someone say, "Oh, it's for Justin the float trough." She's like, "No, it's my PR tool. When the fishing game comes out, I'll lift my trough heights up to where birds can get a drink, not just the cows." So he's providing for habitat for wildlife and for his farmed animals. So there's ranchers, and most people know. Like, I was at some of those events where someone's like, why I want fish on my property again in my streams, so that my kids can fish the creeks that I fished as a kid. It's something, like I said, people that are touching the land, they know ways to do it. But I think there's also tradition and culture and certain disciplines there that we need to look through.
Yep.
And we need to say, hey, what is, really the most effective, whether it's cost effective or socially, environmentally, beneficial? What are the best ways to touch the land? And people that are the active farmers, like we've talked about, they have their duties and their charges to take care of the land and to do things that are good. And then the people that are consuming that, or the urban people, they have their duties to start to, give the money towards the people that are doing things that are good with our land, use plans and strategies. And that's kind of where I really like to see, us help our clients move, whether, like we said, it's commercial, residential, municipal, all this tapestry of land use. We need to kind of look at what is the best benefits. We don't need to really have the labels on it. That could be a whole show. We could talk about organic labels and things, which I think is another topic to get to. But
a constant
I feel
conversation.
like, people really learning to touch the land in a good way, or knowing what that looks like or what it can yield, like starting to get people turned on to using more, native materials. And so, like I said, I've done classes where we're getting people to eat the foods. We're getting people to take things like mugwort and make salves and medicines with it right there on the site, so then they could start to take care of themselves or know what to look for when they want to take care of themselves. I know inside this shack right here, there's got to be tons of good things that, people can put on their body, in their body, and around them.
My tallow. So I had a lady today call me and was looking for grass-fed, grass-finished beef tallow. And she's in upstate Washington.
To swim in.
Yeah. And I was like, you're calling a girl in California that, we're struggling for water. And you can't find grass-fed, grass-finished tallow in upstate Washington.
Between two states.
Yeah,
or
she
three
can't
or
find.
four.
And then she's like, actually, no, everybody grain finishes up here.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, the problem is I can't ship to her. I mean, I can, but I can't. It's just not cost effective.
Should have to go on a California vacation.
Yeah, I told her. I'm like, you have to come make a trip down here. But it's crazy. Just like,
It's right on Main Street.
My phone rings off the hook.
Sure.
And it's sad because it's people everywhere else. And it's different here, right? I'm so grateful for all our local customers, but it's the customers that are outside looking in want what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And yet it's just that struggle and juggle trying to get this information out, get this contact, be able to, hire and build infrastructure that we can actually do this.
Well, we have our own struggles inside of that because a lot of the, land use management here is very traditional to the last 100 years or so of, families that have been here. But we got to look at, how can those people that are on the land now look to those older, technologies and strategies of using like fire, using the animals to, graze things down, to move some of the native seed around or protect certain places and have even more to harvest off the ranches.
It's like we need that old history, right? And we can't let it go.
So it's a blend of these things and trying to update it.
This is where I was kind of going a little bit with my comment, or do we actually need change? And the reason is why I'm saying that is because I got an envelope in the mail today, and it's the egg handler's mill fee, right? And so it's from the state of California. So you can't legally sell an egg off of your property unless you have an egg handler's permit, and you're registered with the state now with Prop 12, and you have to pay 10 cents for every 30 dozen eggs that you sell. It's a mill fee, right?
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to me, like
Another hoop.
Yeah. So again, we've been changing, right? Because I'm sitting here saying, this is what is required. I am no different than anybody raising chickens in the state of California, right?
Yeah, for sale.
If you want to sell eggs, you can't barter and trade. You cannot, just,
Sell them out of your trench coat on the corner.
No, you cannot. The law states you sell, and barter and trade is still considered an income in the state of California. So this is what
Yeah,
I'm
we've
saying.
had some outbreaks, so I mean that's something to watch out for
But none of the
sure,
outbreaks were from anything that came from a backyard. But
Yeah.
I'm also that person.
That's a good
I've
point.
witnessed some things also that I'm like, oh, that's why we have laws, kind of thing. But at the same time, do we need any more change? Notice how I threw out the discipline word.
Well, I think more social change than maybe, policy change or governmental change. Like you said, I think that they're kicking around some of the same ground over and over. And if the market could demand things, where can we go with
But they did, though, Josh.
raw milk?
The consumers have demanded to have a label of a free range. They even voted for it.
Wow.
It was voted for. The California voters voted for the free range law. Did it come written and put into place maybe the way that most people thought they were voting for? Probably not. But at the same time, there's laws, right? We vote, but then there's laws. So if
Yeah.
we're going to vote and we're going to demand it, right? If we're going to expect somebody else to produce our food, and we're only going to demand it being cheap or affordable, whatever. I mean, can you define either one of those? But anyways,
Yeah.
and then we're going to vote to demand it to happen. We demand it. We got it spoken to us, right? Like, people voted for this. It's not
Yeah.
like, random government came into our lives and said, you have to do this. The voters voted for this.
Well, then I think socially what needs to happen is people need to follow through.
Yep.
Because a lot of people could have voted for the whole block, but then all of a sudden we had all these, crazy economic swings going in these, new administration, all the things happening nationally. So people are complaining about, spending that money on those things. So now they're not really helping the market establish or get the footholds that we need, and it's kind of people are, being like, penny smart and dollar foolish kind of thing.
My question is people don't realize that how uneducated, and I'm sad to say it like this, but how uneducated 99.9% of the consumers are, because
or
at the
keeping
same
up
time,
with those regulation changes and all that. Yeah.
but people don't realize what it takes to get a product to a grocery store shelf, let alone what is legal to sell.
Let alone
in
where it
California.
comes from.
Where it comes from. Back to the lady that wanted the
Tallow.
grass-finished tallow. She wanted it for cosmetic, and so when she kept ordering it for cosmetic, she couldn't understand why there was so many other things in it. And I'm like, what do you think? The additives,
All kinds of fragrance stuff or something, yeah.
stabilizers, preservatives, that kind of stuff. And so I said, do you have a farmer's market? And she goes, well, yeah. I go, do you have anybody that raises beef at your farmer's market that fits your...
That has tallow.
I'm like, or do you have a little market that sells, direct beef? And she said, yeah. I go and ask them go purchase beef fat from them. And I literally gave her 15 minutes in teaching her how to make and render beef. And she's
Her
like,
own
that's all
product.
I have to do? You know what I mean? But yet I connected her to somebody in Washington with the legal requirements of what you can do in the state of Washington in that realm. Let alone, I'm bouncing between meat and eggs because I am floored about the constant conversation that people are having about affordability. Egg prices are still high.
Yeah.
I don't know how egg prices can go down when I have a mill fee of 10 cents for every 30 dozen eggs that I have, let alone the $75 registration fee, let alone everything else that goes on just for me to legally sell eggs.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I need these eggs to be high. So how do I create a market to sell them when I have to pay all this? And the consumer
I think that's what's
doesn't
lagging.
want
The
this.
consumer is lagging on its, like you said, sort of knowledge or responsibility of knowing what it takes. Friend, these people always come in and be like, oh, this is too expensive. I can't shop, do organic stuff. It's like, well, hey, you're going to go give your money to something that you just went out and protested or walked against or something. Like, you have to understand and follow the money where it comes through. And when you can help establish a market here locally, that's when prices will go down.
Yep.
But when people are going to really undermine the marketplace, no, then there's no way for them to go down, and they're not understanding their responsibility in the equation or how they can drive, those prices with demand. And I think that, there's a big gap there. I think that so much of our food stuff's here too. Like I said, we need to look at, how do we live more seasonally and eat more seasonally, and how do we, really find ways to eat or waste less. There's so much more we could be doing with our foodstuffs.
How about the
At all
fact
levels.
that how many people I have to teach? You know, I run Creston Valley Meats.
Yeah.
You know, Creston Valley Meats is CrestonValleyMeats.com.
You started a new business teaching.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do human grade and I do pet food quality. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm constantly teaching, and how many people and it floors me because it's again 2 tri-tips to a whole cow. You know, large briskets. You want them cut in half. You know, where's the short ribs come from? Where does, you know, what is flat flank and how about tongue, lengua?
Oh,
you know,
man.
people don't know what any of these are, and you know, and all of our cultures mixing for how many years, and how the industry. I mean, look at especially where we live, and I mean, if you come from Texas and you don't know how to identify a meat cut, I don't know what to tell you. But you know, yeah. But at the same time, I'm floored just in a beef how many people don't know what something is, and they eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I keep
They've
constantly
never processed anything.
No, and I mean, when they get into it and they want to start eating their own, and I explained there's only 2 tri-tips to a whole cow. I mean, every single one of them in that comment is, well, then why are there so many tri-tips in Costco?
I want my cow filled with tri-tips. Can my cow only have tri-tips?
Well, you and me both, right? But I mean,
what would you like your cow filled with?
you know, and how about how many rib steaks do you get? Do you know the anatomy of how many rib steaks? Where does a tenderloin come from? What's the difference between tenderloin and a fillet?
Yeah, those. I know. I'm trying to think right now. Some of my favorite butchers I like watching.
Same in the way it's cut.
Yeah, one's the tip of the end.
I love because the boys at the plant, you know, we all speak Spanish, and it's, you know, there's words that Americans know, culate. You know, that means, you know, big butt in Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's like, but in a pork fashion, you know, we have Americans asking for a culate. And the boys are all like, oh, that's, you know, it's like, it becomes funny. But again, it's understanding what we're asking for, right? Like, what is the purpose of what we're trying to feed ourselves? What are we trying to do? We can't keep saying we need to change things because we've been changing.
Yeah, I think that we need to appreciate. I think it's more, like I said, I think it's just appreciation.
Yes.
So customers and consumers, we should appreciate the food that we have. And that's something I love doing with food. It's something that I'd love to, you know, do together where we could really showcase, you know, what we can do with food that is either, you know, locally harvested or grown here and wild caught. So I really, you know, love getting closer to the process more and more. So like working with the grazers and then, you know, going through the butchering and the butchers. I mean, it's just such love. I really had a few shows that I found, like almost butcher game shows I found on TV somewhere. And those guys, like the whole reason they all do it is because it's like, people, like you said, they don't even know where the cuts are, let alone how to wield the knife and make those cuts. It's like you're not eating not half of beef or bison or elk or whatever it is that's on the hook, you know, unless that butcher puts a blade in it.
We cut
and
wild
people don't
game.
see that.
We cut wild game all the time, and people are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to cut that. I'm like, well, why'd you go hunting then?
Yeah, you gotta look out for a few glands, but man, you're just some
I'm like,
great meat on all these animals.
You know, when you hunt, then you gotta, you know, if you're gonna be good, you need to, you know, aim your target in a right spot so you don't disrupt that cut, right?
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, huh? I'm like, okay, never mind.
I killed this.
Let's put it to sausage. Okay.
Let's grind it.
Let's grind it. You know, and that's people just need, and I'm not expecting everyone to know, but this is like, to me, this is basic elementary levels education.
Well, like I said, they don't need to know, but they need to appreciate where it comes from. And I think other cultures, that's still a job you can have. The butcher, the baker, candlestick maker. I have a great baker that I love in my town. You know, I love you as a butcher. I love to really, you know, have the access to the foods that we can then share, you know, and everyone we love with. So I really think that, you know, food is love. So that's a great place, I think, to kind of aim as a political tool. I really see food maybe driving more of our economy, especially in our area here that's so agriculture based.
Memorial weekend is coming.
Yeah.
Are you going to be grilling?
I'm sure. I was grilling in the field and under the stars the other night. So, I mean, I'll be somewhere.
It's all about grilling on Memorial weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting new potatoes in. We're getting our first dug of new potatoes. So it's all about potato salad. Do you know that people don't realize that real mayonnaise is made with egg? raw egg. Did you know, Miguel, did you know that? Okay, thank God. I had to educate that
Oil
the
and
other
eggs.
day.
That's all there's in there, people.
Right, that's why you cannot let your mayonnaise
Hopefully some
change,
garlic and salt.
temperature, because it has raw egg in it. Okay, but because they always say mayonnaise is or potato salad in the summertime, 4th of July is the biggest food outbreak, illness outbreak, because they leave it out. Yes, don't let your food change to the wrong temperature. But at the same time, it's all about
You
Memorial.
got 4 hours.
Yeah, Memorial Weekend,
certain
it's all about grilling. It's about honoring our past, right? People don't realize Memorial is not just about the party and cracking the beer.
Yeah.
Although I probably will have one or two.
I mean, I think it's good to have days that at least you can be there to celebrate with people you love and hopefully your culture. And the more that we can, I think, bring more holidays to the table, the more better it is, and especially cross-cultural things. Yeah, we've been doing a bunch with the Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year's every year with the Sichuan chef friend. We've been doing, things with like Dia de los Muertos and a lot of other things that we can do to just have more, fun and celebrate. And I think that bringing people together, hopefully that's always around, food, and then that translates into how we're treating each other in the land.
Well, just know that Creston Valley Meats has been cutting away because getting ready for this upcoming weekend. So again, I'm going to put it out there. CrestonValleyMeats.com is also me. And people know me as Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest. People know me as Nature's Neighbor. But I'm also
call you direct,
Creston Valley Meats. .com, and you can order directly off our website, and you can pick it up right here at Nature's Touch too. You don't have to come out to Creston if you don't want to. Yep, just right on Main Street. And but just know too, I raise chickens as well. I also just delivered a beef to my own processing plant last night, so we harvested one of our beef this morning. So
nice.
Yep.
So that's what you're going to be doing.
Yep. So we have a ton of food coming. I raise for human grade under our USDA label as well as pet food quality. I'm a zero waste plant. Nothing goes to waste. I believe in our raw dog food program for our pets, for our dogs. It's where it's at, and understanding how dogs really eat and how the moisture of the food that they eat and how their bodies take to it. Yep. And so I'm doing it. So reach out to me anytime. Miguel always puts my number out there, but also too, you can find me at any of the social media platforms. You can also come to Templeton. And just to know, we are closed on Sunday and Monday. I don't think I ever told anybody that, but I know Miguel showed up and was like, "Where are you?"
Those are the days you got to be partying, so you got to be here before Sunday and Monday.
I start at 4, and there's a day I just don't want to hurry up and get to open. And that's Sunday and Monday. I need to stay on the farm a little longer to be able to make
good
sure.
For your health.
So that's where it is. So here it is on the first live broadcast remotely outside amongst the trees here at Nature's Touch in Templeton. Yeah, Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest .store is the website for here. I got a lot of stuff going on, and Scuba Nature ice cream, locally made, locally sourced, all the real stuff. Yes, you guys, Miguel, you have to take some ice cream home before you leave, okay?
Darn it.
Lemon mascarpone, strawberry cheesecake, vanilla chocolate, cookies and cream, mint chocolate, all those, but lemon mascarpone. Yeah. So, all right, final thoughts, last thoughts, Mr. Josh?
Oh, now I'm thinking about food. I guess
I'm sorry,
I want to go fishing.
Yeah.
This time of year, I'm usually thinking about that, but I got some bear sausage in my freezer from a friend that hunted a bear.
I'm not that hungry.
It's a tough one, but I got some other good meat in there too. But yeah, fishing this time of year is something we're always looking to do.
My whole family hunts. They've always hunted.
Yeah.
So I know what it is. I have family in Idaho. My cousin's in Wyoming working for Weatherby. He's a huge hunter. Like hunting and gathering has been our way of life for years. And so I've had the exposure, but I'm super grateful that I'm a farmer.
Yeah.
I like my chicken that's been raised on green pastures, and I had to put a new fence up yesterday because my new field was their beeline target. So this whole free range chicken thing does not work when I'm trying to plant a new field, so I fenced them up. So, here we are, we're, making this journey of creating this podcast. again, reach out. I've had a little bit of reach out. We're going to get good about communicating through the week and planning what our topics
Yeah.
are, and
We'll
and
be
being a
around.
part.
We'll make it happen.
We're going to make this happen.
Yeah, I think this is a great week to get outside.
It was
do
perfect.
something. Get the garden planted. Get the grill out. Kill some
ready,
veggies.
Get ready for
Get
Memorial.
some meat, whatever
That
sounds
means
good,
Summer
do
actually
it.
officially starts after Memorial. You know
That's
that.
right. That's
Yeah.
when. Yeah, we
Yeah.
just put out the lifeguard towers.
Yeah.
Labor Day.
Oh.
Memorial Day to
Josh
Labor
and Melanie
Day.
are at the lake.
Yeah.
All
All right, we'll be
you
back
guys, thank you.
next
Take
time.
care.